everybody. Welcome to the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report. Today, we have an esteemed guest named Clare Lopez with she's the founder and the president of the Lopez Liberty LLC organization. She's an independent wealth of knowledge and expertise on national security issues, including the Middle East and specifically Iran. Ms. Lopez is fluent in Farsi. She can read and write it, and she has been to Israel several times, all over the Israel, the north and the south. And we have her joining us today to share with us some of her expertise and vantage point on what is happening in the Middle East today and what we need to know as American citizens, as Christian citizens in America, so that we have the correct information and can act accordingly. Clare, welcome to our program. Thank you for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and also where we can find your publications so that we can continue to read your research and findings?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Amy. I'm really glad to be with you and with your guests, your viewers. So yes, I am independent right now, working though, as I always have in my career, on national security issues. And I do have a focus on the Middle East, in particular Iran, as you mentioned, Israel too, been there many times. I do a lot of writing and speaking and interviewing, although I do not yet have a website, which I got to work on. But you can find me at the American Truth Project, the Citizens Commission on National Security, the United West, the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, and I'm on social media. I'm at Twitter at Clare M. Lopez, Facebook the same, my name, and on Telegram at Clarecho, Clarecho, or I'm sorry, Telegram, I apologize. You can find me on Telegram at Lopez Liberty, and on Truth Social at Clarecho, Clarecho.
Excellent, excellent. And I will put together a list of those outlets that you're on so that our viewers and readers have it to quickly click on and find you. So, Clare, the reason why I wanted to bring you to the attention of our viewers is because you have this really niche expertise on what's going on in the Middle East, particularly as it relates to Israel and terrorism, and how that also can affect America and the United States, especially since October 7th, but certainly the history goes long before that. Can you share with us some insights as we continue to pray for Israel, as we continue to support organizations that help Israelis defend themselves and stay at the cutting edge of fighting terrorism, and also what we need to know as we go into a voting season? We're not going to tell anybody who to vote for, but we want people to be aware of the issues so that they can analyze them against their candidates, local, federal, etc., and make sure they are letter writing and communicating with their elected officials to understand the truth, what's going on, and to vote their conscience in that regard. Please share with us some of your knowledge because of your expertise in this realm.
Well, thanks, Amy. So I think the first thing that I would say, and that is fundamental to understanding all of this, is Islam itself. And the fact that a faithful Muslim, not a disobedient one, but one who's actually faithful and practicing and devout, like Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the regime of Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran. It is an obligation of the faith for them to engage in jihad. Jihad is warfare against non-Muslims to expand the religion. That is direct quote from the books of law. And so when we look at the Iranian regime and everything it's been doing since it came to power in 1979, to attack and they want to destroy the Jewish state of Israel, what we have to understand is that regime, that Iranian regime, is acting in complete 100% obedience to the doctrine, law, and scripture of Islam. Part of that has to do with the fact that at one point in history, way back, armies of Islam conquered really the entire Middle East, including the part of that is today the modern day state, the Jewish state of Israel. Any land ever once conquered or occupied by Islam is considered by the faith as forever waqf, W-A-Q-F, waqf. And that means land endowed by God, that is Allah, in perpetuity to Muslims. The second part of that is that when that conquest by the original armies of Islam happened way back in the 7th century, the Jews and many were in the broader Middle East were Christians as well, conquered, all of them, Jews and Christians alike conquered the entire Middle East, the entire Mediterranean littoral, the south and the eastern part of the Mediterranean were Christian and Jewish. Well, when that happened, there were so many of them conquered, that is Christians and Jews, that they all were not going to be killed or forcibly converted. But what they had to do was submit. That's the meaning of the word Islam, by the way, to submission. They had to submit to particular laws and regulations in order to stay alive. This is directly out of the Quran, verse 929. They had to obey these rules and laws and be considered ahla dhimma. Ahla dhimma is Arabic, and what it means is the people who are subjugated, the dhimmi people, the subjugated people. And so taking that as your historical context, now, in 1948, the Israelis, the Jewish people, reestablished a modern day nation state in their ancestral homeland and became a member of the United Nations in May of 1948. Well, this is completely anathema to Islam and the obedient followers of Islam, like the Tehran regime, not the Iranian people, by the way. That's a separate thing.
Yeah.
And so what happened is that the modern day nation state, the Jewish state of Israel, became powerful militarily, economically, a powerhouse, technologically. Think of all the areas of expertise in agriculture and medicine and water management and anything else you can think of that's on the list of their Nobel Prize winners over the decades. Well, this is anathema. And so when this regime in Tehran took power by revolution, by jihad revolution in 1979, it vowed to attack Israel and to try to wipe it off the face of the map. And the way they've been doing that over these decades since is to establish what they call a ring of fire. And that means around Israel are jihadi proxies of Iran. And so to the north, Lebanon, you've got Hezbollah, probably their number one proxy fighting force. To the south, of course, Hamas, and then also a smaller group called Palestinian Islamic Jihad. In Judea and Samaria, you've got all kinds of militias that have arisen from the Palestinian Liberation Organization and Fatah. You've got the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade and more. And then further out, you've got the Houthis, of course. That is a Shiite tribal militia that has taken over at least half of Yemen. And you have other smaller groups of proxy forces that operate in Iraq and Syria, beholden to, under the authority of the Iranian regime, the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force, and in Iraq, those are called the Hashd-e-Shabi, or sometimes you might hear popular mobilization units or something like that. Okay. So all of these proxies have been unleashing on Israel for decades. And fast forward then, bring us to the horrific Shabbat massacre attack of October 7 back in 2023. And that was part of this operational plan, organized, directed, armed, trained, funded by the regime in Tehran, by Iran. And then fast forward once again to just a few days ago or so, over the weekend of April 13, 14, depending on your time zone, 2024. And for the first time, a massive, massive attack from Iranian soil itself against Israel. Now, thankfully, of course, a remarkable coalition came together, the United States, the UK, France, and notably both Saudi Arabia and Jordan. And they were able together to stop, to knock down at least 99% of all the ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones that Iran launched at Israel. So to bring it up then to the current time, we are in a time period after that attack when it is known for certain that Israel will be mounting a retaliatory strike against Iran. Time, place, exactly how, not yet known, but it will be coming because it has to. Not only does Israel have the right to do that, it has the obligation to do it for its own safety and the safety of its people, to let the Iranian regime know that any such attack like that, whether it succeeds or not, succeeds in air quotes, right, will be met with overwhelming retaliatory force, and that's the only way to stop it and halt this escalation, if you will, in its tracks.
So, in light of what you just explained to us, that the fundamental core belief of the Iranian regime currently in power, the Islamic fundamental regime, and its proxies that make up that ring of fire, this isn't about the Palestinian people having a state or anything like this. This is about removing Jews from the land and the state of Israel from the land, to cleanse the land in their vantage point, and that what happened by the hands of Hamas on October 7th was not about having a two-state solution. And when we hear our politicians talking about that, and our university professors talking about that, and the protests in the street from people that maybe don't really understand the situation because they want somehow these Palestinian people to have a state of their own and a freedom, how, from what you're saying, that's not even the goal. And
not even remotely. The first thing to say is that there is no state called Palestine, never has been in the history of the world. There are no Palestinian people. There are residents, population of Gaza, we can call them Gazans. Over 80% of them, by the way, are of Egyptian heritage. And in Judea and Samaria, we can say that there are Arabs, there are Muslims, there are Christians as well. And of course, there are Israelis of all denominations. So the first thing to note is there's no such thing as Palestine or Palestinian people. And so we know from the words of Yasser Arafat himself back in the 1960s, when for the first time the Palestinian Liberation Organization was formed, that it was formed specifically and only for the purpose of attacking Israel, not because there were some kind of dispossessed people. The only people, native and indigenous to the land, going back to the time of Abraham, maybe 3,500 years ago, are the Jewish people.
Right.
They're the only ones indigenous to that land. Everybody else came from somewhere else.
Exactly. And to your point, the actual colonizers are those 7th century Islamic forces that
which overran the entire area.
Yeah, that's why the archaeological record actually proves that the Hebrew and writings and artifacts.
But predate. I mean, here's another thing, that over the years and through a number of American presidents, Bill Clinton, on up to George W. Bush, through the Obama administration, then the Trump administration, now the Joe Biden administration. Actually, a two-state solution, air quotes again, I'll tell you about that, has been offered multiple times and every single time refused. Now, about the two-state solution, This is a bit of history again, but back after the World War I defeat of the Ottoman Empire, that Ottoman Empire was no more. There's Turkey. That is the country that is today whatever is left of the Ottoman Empire. But all these other lands in the Middle East were literally ceded, officially ceded by signatory to the League of Nations at that time, which then turned around and gave mandates to France, the part in the north like Syria and Lebanon, and to the British, the bigger part of the Levant of the Middle East. And the British were given the assignment, the authority by the League of Nations to prepare that land for the establishment of a modern day Jewish state of Israel. Well, the British didn't exactly do that, did they? Because they had sympathy for Arabs from the Arabian Peninsula, the Hashemite clan that used to be in Mecca but got kicked out by Ibn Saud. But they had fought together with the British and the Allies against the Ottoman Turks in World War I. And so there was a kind of a sympathy there, Lawrence of Arabia and all that, right? And so what the British did with their mandate, they chopped off over 75% of that mandate that was supposed to go to the Jewish people, and they gave it to what became Jordan. The grandfather of the current King Abdullah, also named Abdullah, was put in as the monarch, the ruler of the brand new, never existed before state of Jordan. But Israel and the Jewish people still accepted to make their country, establish their country on what was being left to them. So I would say that the two-state solution begins with Jordan. Jordan is the two-state solution. Exactly. It was the state established first
for that Arab population.
For the Arab population. But if you want to go ahead, okay, let's come up to 2005 in Gaza, right? Which is the year that the Israeli government completely pulled out of Gaza. As a matter of fact, we remember those horrific videos of the IDF literally dragging people out of their homes, out of their synagogues.
Jewish families, Jewish business owners.
Jewish families, rabbis. And I don't know if people know this, but they literally dug up the cemeteries and took home the coffins, the bodies of their buried Jewish members of their communities, and took them away as well. But so from 2005 until October 7, 2023, Gaza was Yud and Rein, if you want to use that term. There were no official Jewish presence. There was no official Jewish presence there. 2006, there were elections between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. Hamas won those elections. By the next year, 2007, it had kicked the Palestinian Authority completely out of Gaza. So from that time forward, again, until October 7, 2023, Gaza was essentially an independent, self-governing entity. Call it another two-state solution. What'd they do with it? They have a beautiful climate. They can grow anything. By the way, nobody's starving there. The markets are overflowing with produce, by the way. But they're on the shores of the Mediterranean. I mean, we've all been on the shores of the Mediterranean in places like Tel Aviv. We know what that's like. It's beautiful. In Israel, of course, you've got wonderful restaurants and the beachfront and hotels. Well, that could have happened in Gaza, but no, they didn't do that. By the way, here's something else. Underneath Gaza lies one of the largest freshwater aquifers in the world. They don't lack for water. But what they do lack for are the pumps and the electricity to pump that water up into a pipe distribution system for the people of Gaza. But any time that the world, in their generosity, gifts Hamas with untold millions of dollars, with Israel providing electricity and water to Gaza, that doesn't go to the people. That doesn't help the people out. It goes to Hamas. and the jihadis that it works with there. So they had another chance. That was another chance at self-governance. And I would say at a minimum, they blew it.
They blew it, and they showed their true intent on that morning of October 7th. And you know, somehow the American media seems to ignore the multitudes of video and sound bites from Hamas leadership themselves and certain supporters of them saying that they would do it again and again
Yes,
and again
yes.
and again. So we have to be very careful with the funding and aid packages to what are certainly suffering people in Gaza, but the distribution of it and the administration of it is so suspect. As
it's not suspect. I mean, we've got it on film. Israel has provided tons and tons and tons of food and other humanitarian support to Gaza over these last months. As a matter of fact, more food calories have flowed into Gaza than the entire 2.1 million population of Gaza could possibly eat in an entire year. Just by way of numbers.
Yeah. So also, if anybody's starving, it's because the food isn't reaching the actual.
That's the thing. When trucks come in, very typically, very often, perhaps most of the time, Hamas gunmen commandeer the trucks, and also, by the way, the gasoline in them for their own use. And if they don't use some of it, the food, they put it on the black market at all inflated prices that the poor Gazan people then have to try to buy and afford.
Right. So we as Americans, when we participate in our foreign policy, in our national security discussions, as voters, as letter writers, as just citizens that make up the government that is of the people and by the people, we need to be aware of these nuances, because doing things like calling out Israel to have new elections to change their leadership, or telling Israel what to do with their own security forces, like whether or not to go into Rafah or whether or not to retaliate, this really isn't our place to begin with. And we need to understand why we shouldn't be making those recommendations, because, and your research probably has revealed much of this, what the Israelis are fighting in that ring of fire of the Middle East is spilling out, because Iran's theology and its proxies is not just that nation state of Israel being cleansed of all Jews or unbelievers or infidels. It's also spread out to the world. And I'm sure you can tell us what dangers lie in the shadows right now for Americans on our own soil if we are not careful.
Yeah, so let's bring it home, right? Under this current administration of ours in the United States here, our southern border with Mexico, as we all know, has been wide open for the last 3+ years. And we have no idea who many of those people are that have crossed over, but it's in the millions. And that's not even those apprehended, or even those who have been seen but not apprehended, called gotaways. Millions upon millions. Among those, I mean, our enemies would have to have been brain dead not to have seeded that flow with their own jihadis, all kinds of traffickers, human traffickers, child traffickers, narco traffickers, criminals of every kind. We know for a fact that countries around the world are emptying their prisons and insane asylums to get them out of their countries, out of their jails, out of their custody, and send them across the US's border. So they're all here. And then how about all those single, young, military-aged Chinese men, a number of whom have been identified by some of their, shall we say, behavior as possibly belonging to a special operations unit of the PLA, People's Liberation Army, called the Jungle Tigers. But here we're talking especially about jihadis, aren't we? Islamic terrorists. For certain they're here. We know that Hezbollah has had cells in America for a very long time. Part of the way we know that is that they engage in a lot of criminality, all kinds of criminality, and have been brought into court, and those proceedings have been public. So we know that. But additionally, we also know that Iran itself has dispatched, for example, assassination teams to the United States, and this too has made the media, the news, assassination teams to try to take out former top-ranking U.S. officials, like former National Security Advisor John Bolton, former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and others. And that too has been made public. Those individuals and more have had to have 24/7 personal protection ever since those assassination teams, or at least the presence of those assassination teams, has been made known, has been made public. So we know that Iran and Hezbollah have a presence in the United States, and that is a malign presence. It's not here for the weather. It is here to do us harm. And I think that's something that we need to take note of. We have heard, for example, FBI Director Christopher Wray, I don't know how many times, 2, at least 3 times this year alone, since the beginning of 2024, in front of congressional committees, talking very, very openly, very candidly about the lights blinking red, the alarm that they sense in terms of terror attack here in the homeland. What he might not say there in public session is from where, from whom does that threat emanate? And what we're talking about here is we know where it emanates from. It emanates from Islamic terrorists, from jihadis. And oh, by the way, a number of whom, over 100, I think is the number, have been located on the federal terror watch list. And those are just the ones apprehended, right? So they don't say that out loud, but we know that both Iran and its Islamic terror proxy Hezbollah have cells here in the United States. That is a fact. That's already here.
Well, Clare, your mastery of this topic is so extensive, and I am sure we could talk about it for hours. And I know you write extensively on it, so I am going to make sure that our network has all those websites you mentioned earlier, so we can continue to read on your findings and your analysis of what's going on.
Let me mention one more place that I neglected to earlier. Can add this to the list if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
And that is that I have a blog site at Newsmax. The blog site is called In Defense of Liberty. It's under my name, In Defense of Liberty, Newsmax blog site. And I've written extensively there about both China and Iran, among other topics. So have a look there too.
Absolutely. And to connect this very specifically with our mission at the Jerusalem Connection, Clare, our followers believe in the truth and the accuracy and the eternity of God's promises in the Old Testament, what we call the Tanakh, the Hebrew text. That's why we support the modern state of Israel. We support Jewish people. We know they are God's chosen. And God gave the land of Israel to Abraham in Genesis 12 in a land deed that goes in perpetuity. And what you explained to us is that Islam, under the its scriptural basis in the 7th century or so, Iran has taken that and they are trying to nullify that land grant and that promise and that history. And so for us, it's not only very practical and historical, it's also very spiritual. So that's why I want to make sure our followers, our network, our readers, our listeners know where to go to get information, so that when they are exercising their civic duty, during elections, during debates on foreign policy and that kind of thing, that we talk about where our tax dollars go and why they should or should not go in certain places, in order to be good citizens, as well as conscientious Christians. So, Claire, I really thank you for sharing all of that knowledge with us. I will be sharing all of your links so that we can continue to follow your good work. And we would love to invite you back on in the future as well, so you can update us on your findings and teach us more, as we could probably have a college PhD course just having you explain things to us.
Well,
So
thank you so much, Amy. I'm very glad to be with you today, and I will be happy to come back again on your show in the future.
thank you so much. And again, listeners and viewers, we will be sharing those links for you, and we encourage you to get involved and get educated on these topics of the modern day, so you can fulfill your mission as a Christian. And thank you, Claire, again, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you. Same to you.
Special announcement. Would you like to become a valued sponsor? The Red Alert Report has been ongoing for over 12 years with weekly updates on timely issues and hosting special guests. Our episode count numbers in the hundreds. Shelley Neese's Bible Fiber has been running for almost 3 years now and is growing and gaining new listeners every day. The Jerusalem Connection produces Bible Fiber and Red Alert entirely in-house every week, but we are also involved in many different pro-Israel ministry and education efforts as part of our mission. To commemorate Israel's modern-day anniversary in May, we invite our listeners to support our education and advocacy initiatives by becoming recognized sponsors of either a weekly Bible Fiber or Red Alert episode. We are asking for $76 per sponsored episode in recognition of Israel's 76th birthday, upcoming May 14th, 2024. By sponsoring an episode of Red Alert or Bible Fiber, you will be supporting our organization's mission. You can sponsor an episode in your own name or as a supporter of Israel and the Jewish people during this difficult time. You can sponsor an episode in honor of someone else who also loves Israel and the Bible. We will be prominently featuring your sponsorship message at the beginning of the episode. With your support, we can continue to inform, educate, and activate Christian support for Israel and the Jewish people. If you would like to sponsor more than one episode, please consider becoming a member of the Tikva Club. In Hebrew, Tikva means hope. For a donation of $250 per month, we will recognize your sponsorship at the close of every Bible Fiber and Red Alert episode for the duration of your commitment. To engage in a sponsorship, contact us at srn@tjci.org, or you can go to our donation page at thejerusalemconnection.us/donate. Am Israel Chai.